us for our first community conversation on racial justice and inclusion. We hope with tonight's community conversation, we hope that it's the first in a series of conversations as part of the Community Engagement Committee's efforts to promote diversity in the village of Mount Prospect. Given the national conversation being had at this very moment on issues related to racial equity and policing, we thought our committee was uniquely positioned to address some of these issues and bring together relevant stakeholders throughout the village to have this conversation with you tonight. So tonight you will hear from the mayor, Village of Mount Prospect staff, members of our community engagement committee, and the Mount Prospect Police Department. So bear with us a little bit as we navigate the world of GoToWebinar here. As Howard did note for you, there is a feature to your right where you can ask questions throughout the presentation, and we will try to dive into them the best that we can in the time allotted tonight. To start us off tonight, I welcome Chris Vauden, who is part of the Interfaith Council and also a fellow member of the Community Engagement Committee. Chris will lead us in a brief meditation to start us off.
Good evening. I have two readings I would like to share. The first is a prayer for the unity of humanity. The second is an extract from a letter addressed to the Baha'is of the United States, received only a few days ago on July the 22nd from their International Governing Council based in Haifa, Israel. The letter concerns how we might address racism, described as the most vital and challenging issue. The extract, in only a few sentences, addresses racism succinctly. First, the prayer. O thou kind Lord, thou hast created all humanity from the same stock. Thou hast decreed that all shall belong to the same household. In thy holy presence they are all thy servants, and all mankind are sheltered beneath thy tabernacle. All have gathered together at thy table of bounty. All are illumined through the light of thy providence. O thou, God, kind to all, thou hast provided for all, dost shelter all, conferrest life upon all. Thou hast endowed each and all with talents and faculties, and all are submerged in the ocean of thy mercy. O thou kind Lord, unite all. Let the religions agree and make the nations one, so that they may see each other as one family, and the whole earth as one home. May they all live together in perfect harmony. O God, raise aloft the banner of the oneness of mankind. O God, establish the most great peace. Cement thou, O God, the hearts together. O thou kind Father, God, gladden our hearts through the fragrance of thy love. Brighten our eyes through the light of thy guidance. Delight our ears with the melody of thy word, and shelter us all in the stronghold of thy providence. Thou art the mighty and powerful, thou art the forgiving, and thou art the one who overlooketh the shortcomings of all mankind. And now the extract. Racism is a profound deviation from the standard of true morality. It deprives a portion of humanity of the opportunity to cultivate and express the full range of their capability and to live a meaningful and flourishing life, while blighting the progress of the rest of humankind. It cannot be rooted out by contest and conflict. It must be supplanted by the establishment of just relationships among individuals, communities, and institutions of society that will uplift all and will not designate anyone as other. The change required is not merely social and economic, but above all, moral and spiritual. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. I would now like to welcome Mayor Arlene Juracek to say a few words.
Thank you, Tricia, and thank you, Chris, for those inspiring words. Tonight is but one step in the necessary conversation and action to address racial justice, equity, equality, diversity, and inclusion in Mount Prospect. I want to thank the Village Community Engagement Committee, Village Board and staff, the residents and business people of Mount Prospect for your willingness to participate. And I'm showing 120 people signed into this webinar. So what a great opportunity for us all to converse and share this evening. I'd like to set a framework for us so that we can focus our experiences, fears, hopes, concerns, and resources in a manageable and constructive way. Now, I'm not suggesting that we censor our remarks or limit them in constraining ways, but that we keep in mind three basic predicates for progress tonight. The first is that we participate with an intent to learn from each other. The second is that we begin to better trust each other. And finally, that we pledge to continue the effort. We can do this with the further recognition that our village strategic plan articulates a mission to be the best of suburban communities, thriving, proud, diverse, and connected, having a rich heritage, strong values, and a timeless yet contemporary atmosphere. And we do this by embracing our core values to respect, listen, be ethical, positive, and optimistic, maintain a commitment to service, and sound analysis, decision-making, and consensus. Now, I know a few folks have been cruising our website looking for statements and commitments, and apparently dismissing the strategic plan as sort of a piece of fluff that we put together some nice words and put it on the shelf. I can assure you that that is not the case with our strategic plan. Every single word in that plan, particularly in our mission and values, has been gone over and reached consensus by the village board and applicable to the village manager and the entire staff, from the department heads all the way down to the individual contributors. We are all judged in our annual performance by how well we conform to these words and further the mission and values that they embody. So for purposes of tonight's discussion, I'd like to ask us to think globally, but act locally. I suggest we can be most constructive if we conduct a Mount Prospect-centric dialogue. Let's not fall into the trap of conflating too many issues from headlines across the country, thereby obscuring our local truths and potential for local partnerships. Let's get to know each other better as neighbors by listening to each other and respecting our lived experiences, personal narratives, and collective mission and core values. Let's help each other to break through our individual comfort barriers to trust. Trust is so critical to productive action, yet it's so difficult for some who develop visceral reactions to race-based issues and solutions, sometimes based on violent episodes in other venues and jurisdictions. They'll ask, should I be afraid? I don't know you. Are you one of those extremists using a peaceful gathering to provoke violent confrontation or criminal opportunity? Well, for those of you who are leery of events like tonight's, a focus on neighbor-to-neighbor dialogue and inquiry can go a long way to vanquishing the fears. I truly welcome the opportunity to get to know a wider circle of residents in the village. We're helping to build a pipeline for civic involvement and leadership in furtherance of our vision and goals. You know, for a long time, we prided ourselves on our diversity, with more than 30% of our residents foreign-born. Yet overall, whether foreign or US born, less than 3% of Mount Prospect residents are Black. Has our diversity discussion and mindset so far been limited by white privilege? The eye-opening narratives related by our residents at the gathering on Centennial Green and via emails and messages after that event are powerful illustrations that we all have to work harder to normalize racial diversity in Mount Prospect, to condemn racist behavior, and convince all Mount Prospect neighbors that Black lives truly matter here. This task does not just rest on village government, although we do have an important role to play, but on every single one of our residents and businesses. I thank you to those who have come forward to share your pain and to be productive solution seekers. The death on July 17th of U.S. Representative John R. Lewis brought forth a number of perspectives on his life and his civil rights legend, in his own words and those of his colleagues. In particular, I'd like to close with a few observations from his dear friend, House Majority Whip Jim Clyburn of South Carolina. The first observation is, he said, America is great because its people are good. If the people of America ever cease to be good, America will cease to be good. It will cease to be great. John personified the goodness of this country, and I do believe that's what the fight is all about now, restoring America's goodness. He also admonished us, don't allow headlines to get in the way of headway. And a final comment resonates well with me because I was in high school and college during the sit-in movement of the 60s. And he said the sit-in movement of the 60s got taken away by Burn Baby Burn. Don't let Black Lives Matter get hijacked by sloganeering. So I implore us as residents and leaders in Mount Prospect to now actively listen to the concerns, ideals, and policies being discussed tonight, here and throughout the country. With learning and greater understanding of our diverse cultures and experiences in our community and nation, we can be better versions of ourselves. As Tricia mentioned, this is but one of many discussions in many contexts and venues that we hope to have, not just in the village, but our churches, our schools, our neighborhoods, our business groups, and our families. We all need to be actively involved. With that, I'd like us to now begin with our agenda for the evening, and I'll turn it over to our committee.
Thank you, Mayor, for those comments and for outlining our framework for tonight's conversation. So as noted, we do want to turn this over to our committee. As I noted at the onset, our committee has been an active participant in putting together this evening's conversation. So I want to turn it over to a fellow member of our committee, Vicky Chung, who joins us this evening. Vicky is also a member of the District 57 School Board. So Vicky will outline for us a little bit about the committee's work to date and our work plan.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Tricia. And then on behalf of the entire Community Engagement Committee, I just want to thank all of the speakers who are joining me tonight, as well as all of you who are listening in. And just a repeated phrase that you will hear over and over tonight probably is that we hope that tonight is just one of many conversations that we have as a village and as a community to bring us together and help everyone feel connected. So what I would like to do is to share a little bit about the Community Engagement Committee. I'm going to give a little background on the committee. I'm going to talk about some of the things that we did last year, and then I will end by sharing some initiatives that we have planned for this year. And so by the end of this short presentation, my goal is that some of you out there will feel compelled to learn even more about the committee and hopefully want to join us. So the Community Engagement Committee is made up of 11 people at this moment, including residents and village staff members. We formed in early 2019, so about a year and a half ago, as a group of people who wanted to help build and strengthen a sense of community in Mount Prospect. And one of our key goals last year was to define who we were as a group. So our mission and our vision and our focus areas. And so over the course of several months, we selected our logo. We have a web page on the village's website. So if anyone doesn't know where it is, you just go to the community tab and then you'll see the Community Engagement Committee, the link there. And if you don't mind, I would love to read our mission statement out loud. I'm very proud of it. And it is the mission of the Community Engagement Committee is to bring people in the village together, to embrace and celebrate diversity, to serve as a community voice, and to provide opportunities to connect by empowering residents, businesses, and all members of the community to come together. And so if there's one word that comes to your mind when you think about our mission or about the committee, I hope that word is inclusion. So as we were trying to develop our identity last year, we wanted to reach out to the Mount Prospect residents to let all of you know who we were and to get feedback on what all of you wanted in a committee like ours, and then also to invite interested residents to join us. So to that end, we solicited feedback through a community survey, and we also had a presence at a number of Mount Prospect events. So essentially, we just wanted to build awareness and to talk to people about our committee, and get a sense of what you wanted. And so then came this year, 2020. So we had some initial plans at the end of last year and early this year. But then, as you all are very aware, the pandemic hit in mid-March, so everything changed. So we had to revise our work plans, and I just wanted to share, I wanted to end by sharing some current things that we have on our agenda for this year. Oops, I'm sorry. So first is this community conversation, obviously. Next, we have a yard sign campaign that I'm very excited about. So we are creating yard signs and window clings that we hope will capture our message of unity and community and inclusion and diversity that we're trying to promote. So please keep your eyes open for more information about that. Next, we have a COVID-19 campaign of hope. So our plan with that is just to collect your stories, your photos, and your words of inspiration. So one idea we have is maybe you might start receiving some weekly emails from our committee asking you things like, how has your life changed? What do you want your children or your grandchildren to know about this time? Or maybe just to send in your favorite family quarantine photo. And what we'd like to do is create a collage of responses to hang in the village's community room to showcase our village's resilience and strength. And we also hope to have an online event held in collaboration with the Mount Prospect Public Library to highlight different holiday cultural traditions. So we're going to ask you, our community members, to send in maybe some holiday recipes or family traditions. And we might tie this in with a virtual tree lighting event. And this is all an idea, so I got to run it by people, where you can send in a photo or a note or to hang on the tree, or maybe we can even decorate some trees around Bussey Pocket Park. And so the very last thing I want to say before closing is if anyone is at all interested in learning more about the Community Engagement Committee and possibly joining us, please don't hesitate to reach out. There is a form on the village's website to get more information, and we would love to have more people join us. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Vicky. I know there was an opt-in option for our email updates on your registration form, and we certainly hope that you guys took advantage of signing on to those. But if you haven't, like Vicky said, please do get in touch with the committee, and we would love to have you part of our ongoing updates. So key voices in tonight's conversation are members of our community, and we are joined tonight by two individuals who will be speaking about their experiences on some of the issues that we're addressing tonight. So I first want to introduce Mustafah Adam Yazici. I'm sorry if I messed up your name there, Mustafah, but Mustafah
okay.
joins us. He's the former director of the Turkish American Society of Chicago. So Mustafah, I will go ahead and pass it on to you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, first of all, and giving me this opportunity talking on behalf of the Turkish community in the Mount Prospect. We really appreciate it that you are involving us for this webinar. And since I have an educational background and I used to work at the Cultural Center as a executive director and in charge of the outreach program and activities, I would like to mention more on the education aspect of our daily problems that we are having. And I would like to say, as a man of knowledge, is the one who recognizes that what is known is very little compared to what is not known. So that's why we have to seek knowledge, and we need to get to know each other to be able to make us a better person and better leader in the community. And when I used to work in the cultural center, we organize a lot of programs just because of the, it's an innocent reason to bring the people together. And we believe that once we spend time together and participate in same activities or different activities in the same venue or in a different venues, and we believe that once we get to know each other, and I believe we believe that the problems will be diminished. Not the diminished at all, but it's gonna be less and less and less problems. And also I want to mention one more thing of the education. It is not just the knowledge that you are gonna carry around with you, but somehow we have to make sure that the knowledge belongs to me or somebody else's. Whoever knows, then we have to act accordingly. So then his action responds to his knowledge. So yes, we are here to strive to seeking the knowledge of other people. Even I don't want to say the other people, but the people's, the culture, the religious background, non-religious background, it doesn't matter, because we pay attention to more, the person first language. So it doesn't matter who you are, but we know that you are a person, you are a human person, human being. So that's why we need to get to know each other. And once we know the more our similarities and differences, and I believe that we will be in a to make our community a better community, definitely. And in the same sense, and with all the programs that the current the staff member of the Turkish American Society of Chicago is trying to do the to bring the people together. And the last time they had the program, because sometimes you come up with an idea, what kind of activities should we do, and sometimes you repeat the same activities and over. Sometimes it may not be the good idea. But the last time, since the most of the Turkish community are Muslim and practicing their religion, and the people reach out to us during the Ramadan, where we the fast for 30 days of a month each year, and asking how is it, is it hard, is it this one, what kind of problems you are having on a daily basis. So the idea that the community get together, okay, why don't we invite people to Ramadan iftar dinner? And it was a big gathering, and the task invited more than like 120, 200 people. And we see that it is not kind of targeting the things that we wanted, because of the in a crowd you don't get to see the details of what we are doing and how we are doing with this, the religious pillars of Islam. And the idea came in that, okay, why don't we our friends invite over a dinner in a house where it is like more proximity and more personal touch, of course, and so that we can the get to know each other. That's the whole point, because once we get to know each other, I believe, then we can tolerate more our differences, and of course we appreciate our common things. And yeah, and as the task, we always strive to find ways to celebrate and include differences when appropriate and possible. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much, Mustafah. I think your comments hit the mission of our community engagement committee right on the head. I mean, that's something that both pre-COVID and post-COVID, as we kind of seem to think of timelines now, that's sort of been what the core objective of our committee has been, is trying to continue to find more opportunities for our residents to engage with one another and learn from one another and celebrate those differences. So I thank you for sharing those thoughts today. I now want to welcome our second community member, Julia Norrain. Julia has been a resident of Mount Prospect for more than 10 years now, and she is a mom and raising 3 wonderful children. It was one of the first things that she mentioned to me, so I wanted to make sure I got that out. So Julia, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you so much for allowing me to participate and share my experiences living here in Mount Prospect. We've lived here for over 10 years now, and I have 3 girls who attend Fairview, Lincoln, and Prospect. My experiences here have been largely positive. I feel our race relations here echo what goes on in the US in general. I haven't had that many negative experiences with my friends and neighbors, but I've sat silently to misinformed and sometimes blatantly ignorant comments in conversations. And my silence is just as guilty as those comments. In an effort to fit in and not cause drama, I and many people of color sit idly by and hope that as relationships grow, people will mend the fallacy of their thinking. This doesn't work. The combined silence of both parties leads to all of us ignoring the situation. Silence as a means of keeping things comfortable leads to avoidance of conversations that need to happen with our children. As I mentioned before, my kids school with your kids. If we as adults don't engage in these topics, we will never address them with our kids. Our children, in turn, end up basing their opinions on the opinions of larger society. This causes problems in their relationships with each other, as their views are based on abstract, unrelated, and oftentimes confusing situations, rather than their personal experiences and personal relationships. This is where I'm seeing our problems most evident. My children don't get seen. This is also due to their mother telling them, let things slide, don't cause a problem, things like that. As they get older, they're becoming confused about how much they're supposed to forgive, all in the effort to make friends and fit in. You may be shocked to learn that kids are running around using the N-word, making racist jokes, and solidifying their impression that their heritage and culture is superior. I know that this is out of your earshot and sometimes on social media where you don't see, and therefore left undiscussed by you and your family. We as parents, we have so much on our plate already, so we naturally don't discuss what we're unaware of as an issue. That's why I'm so pleased and encouraged by what's happening here today. Also, the Breathe small group conversation that's happening this Thursday night. Conversations with each other, conversations with our police officers, and conversations with our school officials are really going to help us. We also need to tackle these issues directly in the schools. We need programs that address the issue of race and explore and celebrate different cultures and their histories. We need to actively show and discuss our morals and our views on human rights with our kids. In regards to the police, I've not personally had any experiences with them, but largely I've taught my children the general attitude that we as people of color hold to stay safe. Never congregate in large rowdy groups because you'll stand out to police as the wrong and dangerous one. If something happens or things get out of control, always be aware of your surroundings. Update me constantly when you're out and about. If the police bring you in, do not answer any questions until I arrive. Don't rely on the kids you're with to stand up for you. And this is all just in case. And it's sad that I had to say these things to my children. What I would like to see is a more intentional, visible police presence so that we can get used to seeing them in positive ways at events, in schools, in programs, introducing individual officers to the community, talking to the people they are protecting. Maybe the same officers could be assigned to certain streets, individually becoming personally known to us and resulting in us becoming known to them, excuse me, so that situations can turn from unidentified Black male to, you know, Joey, what are you doing here? Your mom wouldn't want you out this late. I want to be able to confidently tell my kids that police officers are here to help. I'd like them to have the same view of the police that your children have.
Thank you, Julia, for sharing your thoughts and your experiences. I think that your call to the Mount Prospect Police Department about intentional engagement, like you were just saying, and having that very focused presence in the community, transitions us to what I believe is the next portion of our discussion, where I think that we can start addressing some of those issues. So I do want to turn this over to the team from the Mount Prospect Police Department. I think given the way that the webinar is made up here, I'm going to have those attendees focus a little bit on the agenda, where you're going to see the speakers that we have planned in the order in which they're going to speak, and a very brief description about what they will be speaking. So Chief Kozel will be kicking us off this portion of the presentation tonight. So Chief, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Tricia. Tonight, myself and members of the police department will discuss topics raised in the last month regarding police hiring, training, policies, discipline, and community policing. We are here just as importantly to listen to you, the community. It is only through listening that we can come to understand each other's point of view and concerns. Starting off tonight, I will discuss our hiring practices. Good professional policing, like every other profession, starts with hiring good people. We select people with a kind heart who are courageous and want to live a life of service. Myself and a member of the command staff participate in all recruit interviews, along with our Civilian Police and Fire Commission. All recruits must pass a day-long physical, psychological examination, a thorough polygraph test, a rigorous background investigation, including but not limited to a criminal background check, detective interviews of previous employers, family, spouses, friends, associates, neighbors, and checks of their social media posts. Our Civilian Board of Police and Fire Commission is represented tonight by their chairman, Jim Powers, who will give a brief overview of their role in the hiring and promotion and discipline. After hire, officers must pass a 14-week police academy and even longer field training program before ever being placed in this community as a rookie police officer. Throughout their career, officers receive hundreds of hours of in-service training. This includes extensive critical incident training, annual implicit bias training. Sergeant Bart Tweedy, our training coordinator, is here tonight to answer questions regarding our training programs. In addition to hiring good people and proper training, you must have good progressive policies. Ours are vetted and updated through a nationally renowned firm called Lexipol. This ensures we are following the latest legislative changes and nationally recognized best practices. Good policies only work if they are followed and enforced. To ensure that, we have a full-time civilian that reviews all in-car camera footage for policy violations and training needs. We also have an early warning system in place called Guardian Tracking that supervisors are required to make entry into on all their subordinates. The system has triggering mechanisms in place that require review and intervention by command staff. To build mutual trust and respect with all members of the public, our community policing efforts operate through a permanent beat system, which assigns the same officers to the same geographic locations. This allows officers and citizens to get to know each other and address quality of life issues early on. We have an extensive community engagement effort in which all officers are required to participate. Deputy Chief Mike Turner will touch on those efforts, which he oversees. Another program we are proud of, which has made a tremendous difference in the quality of life for our residents living in our multifamily rental housing units, is our crime-free housing program. Mark McGuffin, who runs that program, is here tonight and will give a brief overview of that. Finally, I want to mention how successfully we work with our social services department in assisting our most vulnerable citizens. We are so fortunate to have these angels of the village to assist us, and I am daily impressed with what they can do when teamed up with our officers. I will now turn it over to Police and Fire Commissioner Chairman Jim Powers, who will give a brief overview of the role of that most important board.
Good evening. My name is Jim Powers. I'm chairman of the Board of Fire and Police Commission, otherwise known as the BOFPC. I thought I'd give you, those joining us this evening, an overview of what the BOFPC is, its makeup, and what our primary authorities and responsibilities. The BOFPC is established and derives its authorities from the Illinois Municipal Code and Mount Prospect ordinances pursuant to Mount Prospect's Home Rule Authority. Home Rule Authority simply means that a municipality such as Mount Prospect can, depending on how the particular section of the municipal code is written, vary from the specifics of the language of the code. Based on the Mount Prospect ordinances, particularly Chapter 5, Article 3 of the Mount Prospect Village Code, the BOFPC is a nonpartisan board of commissioners comprised of 5 uncompensated volunteers of Mount Prospect citizens. Each member serves a 3-year term. The volunteers are vetted and interviewed by the mayor and presented to the Board of Trustees for their approval. Each member, once approved by the trustees, takes an oath of office to serve on the BOFPC. Currently, we have a full BOFPC. 2 of us are retirees. I retired from the federal service after 44 plus years of human resource experience with 6 different federal agencies. The other retiree is Rock Bork, who retired from a large private organization which does significant contracting with the federal government. Mark Bussey is our local business owner, and Bill Nee is a lawyer with his offices here in Mount Prospect. The 5th member, Gina Clausen, currently works for the same organization from which Rock Bork retired. And that is the composition of our BOFPC. A BOFPC has 2 primary responsibilities: hiring, and in certain cases, discipline. We are also required to establish rules and regulations by which to accomplish these responsibilities. More specifically, the BOFPC conducts and oversees the hiring and appointing process for probationary police and firefighters, the appointing and promotional process for police sergeants and fire lieutenants, the establishment and conducting of disciplinary hearings upon receipt of charges from either the police or fire chief, requesting discipline of more than what is the equivalent of 5 workdays for non-probationary members of the police and fire departments below the command staff level. In addition, the village manager or the village president, who is the mayor, may also petition the BOFPC with charges against a member of the police department or fire service below the command staff level, requesting discipline of either suspension, demotion, or discharge. Based on the results of the hearing, the BOFPC can either dismiss the charges, assign disciplinary suspension of up to 30 days, direct termination, or in some cases, direct demotion. The BOFPC also rules on appeals from non-probationary, non-command staff police officers and firefighters regarding their suspensions of what is the equivalent of 5 days or less. To accomplish our hiring responsibilities, we, unless mandated by the Illinois Municipal Code, identify, review, accept, and establish hiring standards, including disqualifying factors for entry firefighter, paramedics, and police officer positions. We approve vendors for consulting and testing services. These vendors develop, validate, administer, and score written and subjective tests which will be given to candidates for entry-level probationary police and firefighters. These consulting services also work with the commissioners and command staffs to develop structured, validated interviews, including questions, target answers, and timeframes for the answers, which are relevant and appropriate for our village and the positions to be filled. We also approve vendors who perform the psychological evaluations, conduct the polygraph exams for entry-level police and firefighters, and in some cases, we may have to consult on questions used by the polygraph examinations. A component of the hiring process for entry-level police officers is a structured, scored panel interview, which is combined with a written test score, resulting in a final score. This then results in whether the candidate makes the hiring list or is not on the hiring list. On the fire side, we also conduct structured panel interviews, which are the initial step in the background checking process and can be considered pass-fail for the firefighter paramedic candidates. The panels for both fire service and the police are comprised of 3 commissioners of the BOFPC and 2 command staff assigned by the respective chiefs. To assure proper administration and validity of the interview process, the BOFPC, along with command staffs of the fire and police departments, go through training and refresher training provided by our consultants. The final part of the hiring process is to accept or reject candidates based on the results of the background checking process, the polygraph examination, the psychological examination, and or the medical exam. Regarding the promotional process for police sergeant and firefighter lieutenant, to the extent these processes are not prescribed in law or in one of our collectively bargained agreements, we similarly confer with the command staffs on the development of and approval of the overall process. We also approve the consultants who will administer the various phases of the validated testing process, as well as approving reading lists for the candidates from which the various written tests will be drawn. Finally, we assure that all testing phases have been completed and approve the promotional lists. One more thing regarding discipline. As indicated earlier, the BOFPC conducts hearings providing due process to police and firefighters who have had charges filed against them. The hearing provides for the village or either the police or fire chief to present their evidence and can be presented by legal counsel. The fire or police member can also be represented by legal counsel of his or her choosing. The BOFPC utilizes the services of an attorney to ensure we provide a fair hearing and make an appropriate and legally sustainable decision. Similarly, for those police and firefighters who appeal a suspension of the equivalent of 5 workdays or less, we look at all the evidence and information available, call upon our attorney to answer any legal or procedural questions, and then we make a final determination. And that's what the BOFPC is, who we are in the BOFPC, and what we do. Thank you very much for your attention. And now we'll turn it over to Sergeant Tweedy to talk about training.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sergeant Bart Tweedy. I'm the training coordinator for the Mount Prospect Police Department. We take training here at the police department, very important. It is a high priority for us to make sure that we put out, as the chief said, we want to hire quality officers. We want to give them that good initial training. And then we, in the training division, we want to provide that continued quality training throughout the course of their career. What our goal is to do is put trained officers out there that are skilled in the needs of the community, and so that we can provide a good quality service to the community and help those in need. And we do that by providing that training to those officers. So our officers, obviously, our core mission is enforcement of the laws and criminal investigation. And our officers are trained in those techniques as well through a number of organizations that I'll talk about in just a moment there. We also use our officers as a initial point of contact for many of the different services that we provide with the village. So frequently we'll receive a 911 call, those officers will respond out for an issue. And because we have those officers trained in what to look for, those officers may identify a different issue. So something that we send our officers to is what's referred to as crisis intervention team training. What officers do is they get a overview of the mental health system and how it works. And what we can do is that initial point of contact with that mental health system if we have contact with somebody in crisis. Our officers are then trained in communication and de-escalation techniques to speak with that person in crisis and make the decision of, does that person need immediate medical care and additional mental health treatment at that moment, or will they need that follow-up in the future? If officers make the determination they need at that moment, they're able to fill out a petition and have that person transported to a hospital so they can talk with a mental health professional immediately. If they don't need that treatment initially or right at the moment of contact our officers have with them, they will fill out a report and refer that to our social services, and our many great caseworkers with our human services department will then follow up with that person. We also have several officers that have a designation as elderly service officers. They work our day shift and they receive special training in some of the different issues and laws that apply to our senior citizens in the community. And what those officers do is they can come out with that specialized training if any of our other patrol officers identify a case in which they think the senior could be a victim of some type of criminal act or need additional services. Those officers will respond out and talk with that person and make that determination. And they also, again, work closely with our human services department to provide that additional assistance. Our officers are also trained in, we have several officers trained as crime-free housing liaison officers. What those officers are trained in is they are specialized in landlord and tenant law, as well as training from our building department to look for living conditions that may not be safe or okay for that person. And then they work closely with our crime-free housing coordinator and our community development division, which does all of our building inspections, so that they can provide additional care or help the person with their living situation. They once again also work well with closely with our human services division. What we try to do with our officers is both on the criminal enforcement end and on the service end is work in a concerted team effort with the other departments of the village to make sure that we're getting the proper services out to the people in the community that are in need of those services. With that training and with our multitude of training that we have a number of different vehicles or ways that we get that training. One of those is we do regular monthly online training with our officers through the Police Law Institute. That covers a number of topics of training that are mandated to us by Illinois state law to make sure that we fulfill those training needs and we can keep our officers well versed in that training. Now, traditionally with our training, we do a lot of in-class training where officers would go to different classes hosted by other departments, but with the COVID-19 crisis this year, that's had to change to online training. And so we have done quite a bit of webinars and other online training put on by different organizations for our officers to help them maintain that professional skill set and job knowledge that they have. We also are a member of several training organizations. Our primary source for training is what's referred to as the Northeast Multi-Regional Training Organization. That's a mobile training unit that provides training to the Northeast part of the state of Illinois. And they provide a number of different classes and a number of different categories to help our officers with that continued professional growth. We also send our officers to the Suburban Law Enforcement Academy at the College of DuPage in Glen Ellen. And the officers, when they go out there, that Suburban Law Enforcement Academy not only provides initial academy training, but they also provide professional development for our officers, and again, in a number of different topics. Some of those topics include law, interview and interrogation, defensive driving of the patrol vehicles, verbal communication, and then a lot of the different specialty work. We have officers that work a number of different specialties and specialize in a different job knowledge. accident investigations, evidence technicians that are go out and they process crime scenes and dust for fingerprints and all the kind of things that you think about an evidence technician would do. We have officers trained as youth officers who act as an advocate for a juvenile if we have police contact with that juvenile, to make sure that the juvenile understands what's going on and that we handle the process correctly, and can be kind of a first point of contact to hopefully divert those juveniles from the criminal justice system. Besides those specialties, we have a canine officer. Our canine officer, his name is Officer Fur, and his dog is Alex. And he provides, Alex needs some regular training and care, so Officer Fur and Alex get quite a bit of training with that specialty as well. Like I said, Neimer and Celia provide a lot of that training for us. We also use different private companies that come out and teach training classes on a number of topics that our officers might need or want to expand their professional knowledge on. And so we have we provide or send officers out to training for those companies as well. Something that we're proud of with training and that we do a lot of here is in-house training for our officers. So police work requires a wide job knowledge and a lot of professional skill development over a course of a career. And as we know, laws can change from year to year. Court rulings on things like search and seizure law, that can change from year to year, and we want to make sure that we keep our officers current with that information and we keep our officers well practiced in the different techniques. So not only we send them out to training, but we also continuously provide in-house training for that. So one of the bigger ones that we cover is state mandated, but we make sure that we cover it on a year to year as well, is use of force training. So officers every year, they take an online module to review state law, Supreme Court law, and the Graham-Connor and Tennessee versus Gardner cases that are relevant to our department use of force, and also our department use of force law, to make sure that our officers are well versed on that on an annual basis. We then bring our officers in for an in-house hands-on use of force day. Covers a number of different topics. We cover handcuffing and the safe application of those handcuffs, and how to do that. We teach our officers to work together as a team, and that communication is paramount with the offender, that we make sure that we're talking with the offender, telling the offender what it is that we need to do, and then our officers are working together with each other so we can safely take a person into custody, even if that person wants to resist and doesn't want to physically be taken into custody. We also cover a number of different topics related to control tactics. What I refer to control tactics means if somebody is resisting being arrested, if we're going to apply force to that person under the law, we want to make sure that we're following the law and we're following department policy when we're doing that, and we're providing it in a safe and efficient way possible to minimize the chance of injury to both the offender and to our officers. So we make sure that we cover that. All of our officers on the department are also carry the taser. I'm sure everybody's familiar with Axon and their taser product that they use as a conducted energy weapon. We give our officers annual training on the law and case law concerning taser, and also make sure that they have a knowledge and they're proficient in the function of that taser, and they can use it when needed or not use it when not needed. We then take that and we provide a hands-on test for those officers through scenario-based training. So both myself and a number of officers with the department are instructors, and what we do is we will actually dress up in the taser, or we refer to it as a red man suit. It's a padded suit that provides protection to us as the officers. And then we design and we put our officers through a number of different scenarios. Now there's no we have a planned outcome as the trainers as to what those scenarios are going to be, but we test a number of different skills for the officers. So it's not enough to just have the officers practice putting the handcuffs on. What we want to do is we want to put them in a scenario where they have to identify what is going on, communicate with that person in an effective manner as to find out if they have a legal reason to apply those handcuffs. If that person is agitated, practice the de-escalation techniques, which is also something that we cover on an annual basis in in-house training, and try to de-escalate that person. Now, sometimes the scenario is they are safely able to use those verbal skills to de-escalate that scenario. Sometimes the scenario could be somebody who's going through a mental health crisis, and that the officers are able to talk and communicate with that person and work a solution to get that person some additional follow-up care. And sometimes the person is in violation of criminal law, and we'll provide physical resistance to that. And then we want to test our officers and make sure that they are able to properly apply the level of force that they reasonably believe necessary to bring that person into custody. And that ranges of a multitude of empty hand techniques, all the way up to application of the taser. And in a few scenarios, we'll make them deadly force where the officer needs to apply deadly force to protect themselves or another from death or great bodily harm. So we test those officers in those dynamic scenarios on a regular basis and on a yearly basis to make sure that those officers are proficient. We then give the officer a debrief after those scenarios. If the officer doesn't perform in a way that we think is what we want to have them do when they're out on the street, we bring that officer back in and we rerun those scenarios, and we break down what it is that they did well and what it is that we want them to improve on, and we make sure that they actually have made those improvements before we clear them to go back out onto the street. Because again, we take the fact that we have legal authority to provide force very seriously, and we want to make sure that we're putting our officers through rigorous training so they can make those decisions in a timely manner and make accurate decisions as well. We also provide regular firearms training at multiple points throughout the year for our officers, make sure our officers understand the law and department policy related to applying deadly force, that they're able to make good decisions of when deadly force is needed and when it is not, and that they're able to safely operate the tools that we provide to them if in fact deadly force is needed. Something else that we do with our officers is we find that since we are out on patrol on a regular basis and driving around, if somebody is in need of a medical emergency, could be stop breathing, heart attack, choking, we are often the closest person to that person that is trained to provide care. So officers respond out to that. So we provide CPR, AED, and Heimlich maneuver training to our officers on a biannual basis to make sure that our officers are proficient with those techniques, and we can come out, we can provide assistance to the community when needed with that. We also, unfortunate reality of today's world is people coming in and engaging in mass shootings in public areas and trying to kill and injure a large number of people in a short period of time. That's an unfortunate reality for our current state of things, but what we want to do is we want to get our officers in there so that our officers can respond to those in a quick and efficient manner, and we can stop the threat and minimize the amount of casualties that occur in a situation like that. Our officers are then trained in trauma medical treatment, how to provide tourniquets, pat gunshot wounds, apply bandages, so we can provide that treatment, because often in situations where somebody is seriously injured, we have mere minutes to save that person's life before that person could bleed out and perish from the injury. So we make sure that our officers are well trained in those medical techniques as well, so they can come out, provide that care, and not just in a mass casualty situation, but also responding to incidents and violent crime in the community as well. We want to make sure that we can provide that care. Now I'm going to turn it over to Deputy Chief Michael Eterno, who's going to talk about community engagement and beat meetings.
Thank you, Bart. Good evening. My name is Mikey Turtle, and I'm the Deputy Chief of Operations here at the Police Department. One of my areas of responsibility is to oversee the Police Department's community engagement initiatives. But before I discuss the community engagement program, I think it's important to take a moment and talk about our police patrol beats first. I know Chief Kozel had briefly mentioned this, but in 2016, the Police Department transitioned into what we refer to as permanent patrol beats. For those who don't know it, the village is divided into 6 different beats, and each police beat has at least one officer assigned to patrol that area on every shift. The officer or officers assigned to a given beat are generally responsible for patrolling and responding to calls for service that may occur in that geographical area. The officers are also tasked with identifying any type of criminal activity or other quality of life issues which may be occurring, and formulating a plan with their beat partners on how to address these issues. One of the benefits to permanent beats is that by having the same officers work in the same areas on a regular basis, our officers are more familiar with issues or problems that are occurring within their beat and can address them on a more individualized basis. Some other benefits are the opportunity to form relationship with residents and business owners and enhance our community partnerships. Now, prior to implementing these permanent patrol beats, officers were randomly assigned to patrol beat every day at the beginning of their shift. So what that would mean is one day an officer could be patrolling the north end of town, and the next day he or she could come to work and end up patrolling the south end of town. In 2016, we made the decision to start assigning police officers to the same patrol beat, and these assignments were reevaluated annually. Now, the concept of permanent beats is a community-oriented policing strategy that has been around for many years. It gives our officers the opportunity to get to know the residents who live and work in their beat. And it also gives the residents and those who work in town the ability to get to know the officers who patrol their neighborhood. After we had transitioned to permanent beats in 2016, we now had to find a way to get our officers out of the squad cars and meet our residents. So in 2017, we started our community engagement initiatives. Now, to be fair, over the years, the officers assigned to our crime prevention unit have done an amazing job of engaging the community through various events and activities. So while community engagement initiatives wasn't a new concept for the police department, it was new in the sense that this initiative involved all of our patrol officers and not just one or two. When this program kicked off, we had each officer participate in at least 2 community engagement events every year. The goal with these community engagement events was to create a relaxed and casual environment so our officers, residents, and business owners could get together and meet one another. Unfortunately, far too many times in this profession, we meet people on traffic stops or when something traumatic or terrible has occurred in the person's life and they call 911 looking for help. We were hoping these pre-planned events would give our residents and business owners a chance to get to know the officers who patrol their neighborhoods. These events also provided our residents a chance to come out and ask the officers questions or make them aware of any situations which might be occurring within their neighborhoods. While we were hoping these events would be helpful so our residents could get to know our officers, it was equally important and helpful for our officers to get to know our residents. And to show how important we felt the community engagement was, we included this as one of the goals on our officers' annual performance evaluations. Since beginning our community engagement program, we've seen a variety and different levels of creativity when it comes to these events. Early on, some of our officers organized the more traditional coffee with the cops events at McDonald's or Dunkin' Donuts. During these events, McDonald's and Dunkin' Donuts would provide us with some crafts of complimentary coffee, and for a few hours, our officers were available for anyone who wanted to stop by and talk to them. Now, over time, officers came up with various other ideas. Some of our officers coordinated a free ice skating event at the Mount Prospect Ice Arena, while another group organized and ran the police department's first ever 505K. The net proceeds from this run went to support the village's food pantry. We also provided our officers with a list of some of the annual community activities that occur within the village. Officers were encouraged to attend these events as part of their community engagement initiatives. A few of the events that were on the list we provided officers included the celebration of cultures, the police department's Kicking It With the Cops Summer Youth Soccer Program, any of the downtown block parties or festivals, the farmers market, the Bluesmobiles Cruise Night, the village's tree lighting ceremony, the police department shopping with the cops event, the regional Special Olympics event held at Prospect High School, the police department Citizens Police Academy, or the department's newest initiative, the Teen Police Academy at Prospect High School. The Teen Police Academy was a new program which we were looking to introduce earlier this year in April. However, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, our Teen Police Academy, like all of our other community engagement activities, had to be canceled for 2020. The Teen Police Academy is essentially a modified version of the Citizens Police Academy. However, it was geared for teenagers. Our intention was to hold the Teen Police Academy at Prospect High School 2 days a week for approximately 6 weeks, each session lasting 45 minutes. By limiting each class to 45 minutes, it still allowed the attendees the opportunity to take the late bus home. We also had officers who came up with their own community engagement ideas as well. One officer wanted to organize a movie night out at Lions Park. We invited families to come out and sit with us on the grass and watch a movie on an outdoor screen. Officers helped hand out popcorn, and other than a passing shower before the start of the show, the night was a success. Another idea our officers came up with was to set up a dunk tank during one of the downtown block parties. The officers even volunteered to sit the dunk tank, and they charged a few dollars for attendees to try and dunk the officers. And as you can imagine, believe it or not, there was a very long line of people who wanted a chance to dunk the officers. The best part about this community engagement event was similar to the 505K run. All of the proceeds collected went to the village's food pantry. And again, these are just a small sampling of the community engagement events we've seen officers participate in and come up with over the last several years. In 2019, the police department wanted to continue to build upon our community outreach efforts within the community. In hopes of identifying a better sense of our residents' needs, we decided to start hosting beat meetings. As I mentioned earlier, we have 6 patrol beats within the village. Each beat has a patrol sergeant assigned to oversee the officers in that respective beat. In 2019, these 6 sergeants were asked to host 2 beat meetings each year, one in the springtime and one in the fall. These beat meetings were more structured than the community engagement events that the officers had attended and gave us a forum where we could provide information to the residents. We used these meetings to pass on valuable information regarding a variety of topics. In one of our beat meetings, we discussed the Illinois Secretary of State's graduated driver's license program, which we felt might be useful to any parent who has a teenage driver. These meetings also gave us the ability to pass along helpful crime prevention tips to our residents, such as how to reduce your chances of becoming a victim of identity theft or being burglarized. It's just a couple of examples. We also wanted to use these beat meetings as a way to share with our residents any trending issues that we were observing in that part of town that they should be aware of and allow residents to ask whatever questions they had. 2019 was our inaugural year for these beat meetings, and what we discovered was that in many cases, there were far more officers in attendance at these beat meetings than residents. Recognizing that we as a department needed to find better ways to let the community know about these meetings, I met with the village's community engagement committee, the same group who is moderating tonight's forum. And I explained what obstacles we had encountered in 2019 with our beat meetings. I looked to them for any suggestions on how to get the word out to the community about these meetings. The committee provided us with some great ideas, and we were in the process of discussing them internally within the police department when the COVID-19 pandemic struck and brought our beat meetings in 2020 to a grinding halt. Our hope is that at some point in the near future, some form of normalcy will return and we'll be able to resume our in-person community engagement events that our officers attend, as well as our beat meetings. With that, I'd like to turn the presentation over to our next speaker, who is Mark McGuffin, who is our department's crime-free housing coordinator.
Hi, I believe we're going to pause the presentation on crime-free housing because we want to be mindful of the time tonight and we want to get to some of these questions that are coming in. So I'm hoping that throughout the conversation and addressing some of the questions, we can get to some points from that last portion of the presentation. So we received a number of questions via the email portal tonight. I thank everyone for submitting those. We've also been receiving a series of questions tonight. Again, if you joined after we started, there is a question and chat feature towards your right. So if something has come up during the discussion that you would like to ask about, please feel free to send in that question. We're going to try to get to as many of these as we can. What I do want to remind the group again is that we are hoping that this is certainly the first of many conversations. So we want this dialogue to continue, and we'll start to delve into some of those questions and issues tonight. So the first issue that we got a number of questions about was hiring practices and representation on both village staff and the police department in particular. So I would like to take both of those separately if we can, starting with the police department since they just completed their presentation. We received two to three questions in this regard. An individual by the name of Les submitted this question. And I'd like to direct this question to the police chief, and perhaps Jim from BOFPC can chime in a little bit as well. Are there any people of color currently serving on the Mount Prospect Police Force? If so, how many? If not, please tell us what the plan is for hiring people of color to the Mount Prospect Police Force.
Yes, we do have officers of color. I have our demographics here for the police department. I'll just run through them real quickly here. We have 1 Asian, 1 African American, 10 Hispanic Latino officers, 1 Native Hawaiian, a Pacific Islander, and then we have 68 Caucasian. The percentages come out to the Asians 1.23, African American is 1.23, Hispanic Latinos 12.35, And if I go over here to the village itself has 12.3 Asian. We have 2.6 African American, and we have 17.3 Latino. So there's much work left to do here, but I did want people to know that it is something we struggle with. We have trouble getting, frankly, African Americans to take the test. It's not that they wouldn't do well in the process. It's we don't seem to get them to the test. I also want to mention that in addition to the people of color, we have Caucasian officers that are fluent in Spanish, Russian, Polish, Croatian, and the Serbian language. And I think that's important. People need to understand that. I mean, just picture yourself as a Hispanic and you have a Caucasian officer walk up to you and all of a sudden he speaks your native language. It makes a big difference to them and their trust with the police officers. We're going to continue our recruitment efforts by attending job fairs in Chicago like we do, where Mike touched on our upcoming Junior Citizens Police Academy at Prospect High School. We're trying to get some of the minority students involved in that. We, along with many Northwest suburbs, are in the same boat here, and we've been working with Harper College on holding recruitment. It was going to be a recruitment information day. We're going to have chiefs there, people from the testing processes, even a psychologist there to explain the process, maybe make it more comfortable for people who may or be on the fence about whether they're interested in law enforcement. Then COVID hit. I mean, literally hit. It was scheduled, and then 2 weeks later we had to cancel it. But we're going to do that again. And in a way, one interesting thing about Harper, we've talked to some of the African American students there and asked them why aren't you interested in law enforcement? And they tell us that their families discourage it. And this was actually before this last incident out in the last month or so of incidents involving police and people of color. Another more long-term recruitment effort, we're going to continue with our youth outreach programs. We think it's important. This is something that's not going to happen overnight, but if we can get the minority children interested in knowing who we are, that we are a friend, and maybe when they're talking to officers, they explain the benefits of the job. And the same thing with the high school officers. I can't tell you how many interviews I sit on with police applicants, and we ask them, when did you become interested in law enforcement? And they say it was, I had a great high school police officer, and that's when I decided I wanted to do it. So frankly, we'll do anything to try to expand our applicant pool, and that's one of the things I hope to use this committee for, is to try and help that out.
Thank you, Chief. I want to broaden that conversation to the rest of the village. We received a series of questions regarding representation throughout the village and whether staff reflects the demographics that it serves in our community. So I believe we have our village manager, Mike Cassidy, on the call. Mike, if you can talk briefly regarding what is the official strategy or plan that the Village of Mount Prospect has in place to encourage more racial and gender diversity. And if you can couple those comments regarding any diversity training that's happening at the village for staff, that would be great.
Sure. Thanks, Tricia. We are working as a leadership team to ensure our village team represents the demographics of the Village of Mount Prospect. We're not there yet. Based on our 2010 census, we're still off in terms of gaining people of color into the organization. So really what we're trying to accomplish is innovation in terms of networking in areas where we do have minorities that may be interested in public service, in public safety positions. So it's really getting out into different areas within Illinois in our recruiting efforts. But bottom line, we're not there yet, but it is something that is a top priority for us to ensure that the makeup of the Village of Mount Prospect organization reflects the makeup of Mount Prospect. Before the tragedies happened in Minneapolis, we have been working as part of our staff leadership program on training effort, and specifically to diversity, equity, and inclusion training. So we, in the first quarter of this year, had interviewed or actually looked at 6 different organizations to provide that training to all village team members. And we would also welcome our elected officials to attend that training. We interviewed 3 groups and settled on Dr. Adrian Coleman of the Candid Conversations Matter LLC, who seemed uniquely qualified to come into our organization and kind of open our eyes to, the things that are really important right now for us to be focused on relative to implicit bias, explicit bias, oppression, societal oppression, privilege, power, and history, social injustice, equity, cultural competence, individual and institutional perspective, and other assessments that we can complete in the half-day training throughout the organization to better understand issues involving diversity, inclusion. So we've got work to do, but I think we're making headway. It's certainly top of mind as we are thinking of our not only our recruiting strategies, but our succession planning as well.
Thanks, Mike. Some of the questions that have been coming in this evening during the police presentation, so I'm going to direct this question to Sergeant Tweedy. If you could discuss a little bit about, going back to the conversation on training, what training the officers receive on issues related to implicit bias or racial profiling. Would you be able to speak to those? Because those were directly asked tonight.
Oh, yes, I can. When I talked about our online training through the Police Law Institute, our officers conduct annual online training in both implicit bias and racial profiling.
Thank you. Thanks so much. We also received a series of questions through our email portal regarding the Mount Prospect Police Department logo. I know there's been a lot of discussion on the logo in the community as it relates to the thin blue line. So I would like to direct this question to the police chief, if I may. The questions that we received, again, were numerous, but it could be summarized as the following. The thin blue line appears on officers' uniforms in Mount Prospect. This symbol has been used as a symbol of hate throughout the country. Can you please explain why this symbol still appears on their uniforms? Can you please provide a background on the selection process for the shoulder patch design?
First, I'll start out with what the blue line means to me and many other officers. I was born into the police family. My father was a police officer when I was born after he got out of the Marine Corps. So I've been around officers my whole life, and not just my professional life. And that blue line symbol is always meant to us the line between chaos and order. And over the years, it's come to signify honoring the fallen. And I'm here to tell you that all the police officers I know have never looked at it as a symbol of hate. It's been on our crime prevention car since 2016. We only received positive praises on that. It's really kind of all over our society representing the police. I mean, Illinois Special Olympics had it on their T-shirt last year. The Blue Line website is the one every officer and firefighter goes to learn on what police departments and fire departments are training. It's kind of a universal symbol for honoring the fallen. And I understand that there's a white supremacist who carried the flag in a demonstration in Virginia that started this talk of it meaning something else, but there was also an American flag next to him. And it's been hijacked by him maybe, but I'm just not ready to go there and agree that this is some sort of a hate symbol. Frankly, it's just the opposite to us. I'm holding up here, this is the mourning band we wear over our badges when we go to an officer's funeral. So it's very hard for us to take on this. Some people are saying it's a white supremacist meaning, that kind of a thing. As far as where the patch came from, I'm going to read to you a press release that was done on December 15th of 2017 when the patch was first put on officers' uniforms. This was given to the newspapers. It was on our social media and village website, and I believe it was in the Journal actually published it. And please understand, when we had this patch and we did this press release, the department or the village received no complaints about this. In fact, we never heard a bad thing about it until the image was put on the village sticker, and there were some people that were concerned about putting that on their car. And I will say that I believe that's different than us wearing it, knowing what it means to us, and maybe some people didn't want. They even talked about maybe their car get vandalized with a police village sticker on their car. But I'm going to read this. It's pretty brief. Mount Prospect police officers will soon be wearing a new patch on their uniforms that has recently been selected by members of the police department. The new patch was designed to honor the law enforcement profession and embrace the history of Mount Prospect. The patch displays an outline of the state of Illinois with a star representing the village of Mount Prospect. The year of 1917 is included on the patch to represent the incorporation of the village. In the background of the patch is the thin blue lined American flag. The thin blue lined flag honors law enforcement officers who have made the ultimate sacrifice for their communities, losing their life in the line of duty. The thin blue line also represents the oath that law officers have taken to protect the citizens from harm. The new patch was designed by a patch committee comprised of officers, sergeants, and commanders, and voted on by the sworn members of the department. Our officers are proud to serve the Mount Prospect community, serving with compassion and protecting with courage. So I guess finally, I would just say we believe we're in an honorable profession. This is a symbol that means that to us. And I guess I'm going to have to agree to disagree with those who see it differently.
There have been calls at the national level to defund police. Tonight, we received 2 questions on this issue. Digging deeper into this issue as it's being discussed nationally, the call is there for local governments to look more closely at how it's allocating its local budget to law enforcement efforts and whether those additional funds could be spent on supporting social services to its residents for things like mental health, homelessness, and supporting victims of violence. I have Julie Kane here on the call, who is the Director of Human Services, and I wanted to invite Julie to talk a little bit about how the village budget might be structured to support the efforts of you and your team, and any collaboration that you're doing with the police department on some of the calls that they're making in the community.
Sure, thank you, Tricia. The Village of Mount Prospect is really somewhat unique in that it has an entire department devoted to providing human services to the community. We provide both public health and social services. We're a team of 10 in our department, and we provide services across 2 locations. 6 of our 10 team members are bilingual. Our team members have very specific roles within our department and areas of expertise, and we provide a variety of services that to the community, ranging from services that address social determinants to health, all the way to crisis response and counseling support. We have a social worker on call 24/7 that is available to respond out to crisis situations, as well as to consult with our fire and police department personnel if needed. I want to talk a little bit about one of our social work positions, which is the police social worker, who works in the police department on a daily basis and provides services to, excuse me, cases involving mental health issues, domestic violence, victims of crime, assistance, substance abuse, juvenile issues, homelessness, and any other cases which might benefit from social service assistance and support. This position and the collaboration between the police and the police social worker is really vital to ensuring that residents receive ongoing support and services that they need after the initial response happens. And I would just say that due to the various services that our department provides, we're able to take a very holistic approach in helping residents. Things that we cannot do in-house, we work with our local community partner agencies to make sure that residents are connected to services that they need. So hope that helps.
Thank you, Julie. I want to be mindful of the time here today, and I wanted to sort of veer towards the end of our discussion this evening to talk a little bit about inclusion. That was a common theme that has run through a series of questions that we received tonight. I'll read a few of them that we got. Is our village cultivating a true sense of belonging? How do we make sure that all types of people feel welcome in our community? On the chat feature in the last hour, we've received questions about engagement efforts with the disabled community, engagement efforts with seniors and with youth. How can we make our village government understand that true social justice is not about whether or not our police force is representative of our community, but how individuals of color are made to feel welcome and accepted in our community? So I actually would like to toss these series of questions to the mayor and to see if she would like to comment on those.
Thank you, Tricia, and thank you for the questions. In my introductory remarks, I talked about getting to know a wider circle of neighborhoods in our community. And that is really the crux of the matter. We have a number of boards and commissions, very few Black representatives. Our most diverse commission is our Sister Cities Commission. We actually have 2 Black representatives on Sister Cities. We have had 1 Black person on our Planning and Zoning Commission in the past, but it has tended to just not be inclusive of people of color. And I attribute that to a couple of things. One is people coming into the community are busy in their day-to-day lives. We heard from Julia earlier that she's got 3 children, she's working with them, her family, her job, keeping very busy. And it tends to be older people that tend to volunteer for our boards and commissions. But what I'm hoping is that through these dialogues, we get more people interested in this conversation and that it sparks a greater interest in village as a whole, and that I can get a more diverse set of volunteers. And certainly when I'm out and about talking to people in the village, if I see somebody with a particular talent that could be useful, I do encourage people to nominate themselves for a position on a board or a commission. And while we may not have an immediate opening, certainly we keep those nominations on file so that when openings come up, we're able to take advantage of them. We've been doing things like our 50 and older senior breakfasts. I hate calling 50 old because you're not old till you're 80 as far as I'm concerned. But we have been engaging our senior citizens. Certainly I take every opportunity I can to go to various meetings and gatherings and get to meet people. It's one of the reasons why I do so many ribbon cuttings. People may think it's just to get my picture in the newsletter. It's really about getting to know the business owners. So many of our new businesses are actually opened by minorities and people of color, and it's a great opportunity for them to get more comfortable and familiar with our village government, continue the good relationship that got them to opening their business, and to allow them opportunities to get more involved. So it's a constant personal one-on-one effort. I want to encourage those on this call who think they might like to be more involved, either on the Community Engagement Committee or other boards and commissions, to get involved. And then we have elections coming up too. We don't have any elected officials of color. It tends to be rather rare among all the Northwest suburbs. Herb Porter is an African-American trustee in the village of Hanover Park, and he's been very active in the Northwest Municipal Conference, and really an invaluable resource to get a perspective on the issues that impact African Americans serving in elected office. I really do want to encourage people to explore the opportunity and get to know more about the village. It's one of the reasons too why I've been involved in so many regional efforts, either the O'Hare Noise Compatibility Commission or through various Northwest Municipal Conference entities, is to get a broader perspective on how other communities are encouraging broader participation. And it's kind of cool when you talk to people in other towns. Oh, my uncle happens to live in Mount Prospect. My cousin lives in Mount Prospect. We're very connected on a regional basis, and to start creating those connections. So it's a long effort, and it's a mutual effort. And I hope that these conversations, while they tend to have been sparked by tragedy, that in the long run, that tragedy leads to a greater conversation and a greater recognition of the diversity in our community and the acceptance of everyone in our community. One of the questions I read said, well, these conversations shouldn't be at the library. The village has to run these conversations. And I totally disagree with that. And as I said in the beginning, it's not just the village. It's the schools, it's the businesses, it's the libraries, it's your families, it's the business groups. We all have to engage in the conversation.
Thank you, Mayor. We receive, and perhaps you can comment on this next portion, and I invite members of the village staff to share their thoughts as well. But we've received a call on continued transparency and sharing of information on various issues today. Specifically, we were asked if the police department would consider adding a web page to the Village of Mount Prospect website regarding their training and policies, like a frequently asked questions portal. I've seen some other municipalities adopt information like this in light of recent events and have it available for residents to read. Is something like that currently available, or is there a plan to create something like that?
As the mayor, I certainly would encourage that. I know we did discuss this at the Northwest Municipal Conference. I know the city of Evanston does it. The village of Northbrook does it. There's nothing secret or confidential about these policies. And I know that the chief has emailed PDF versions of our policies or web links of our policies to residents who've asked him questions. It's probably a long process, and he's going to have to assign somebody to do that process, but I don't think there's anything inherently preventing us from putting those policies out. I'll turn it over to the chief in terms of the ability to implement that. And I hope I didn't make promises that you can't keep.
Oh, Trish, I got this earlier as well, and I went and looked at Evanston's website. That was the one that they mentioned. And we do have some things on there, and frankly, I found it a little difficult to get to the police part on the main village website. So I did have Greg Sill today put a connection to ours to it, and that would be definitely in regards to those 8 can't wait topics that have been raised by a lot of people, and it is almost a half of what Evanston's Q&A is here. So I encourage anybody to go on there right now. It's there, but of course we can add, use of force policies, one that came up, and we're half the size of Evanston with half the staff and half the clerical folks, but we can by all means get more on there. But I think that based on this person's question, if they go on there now, they'll see the 8 can't wait, my answers to those, which it was there, but it was kind of buried,
Okay.
Yeah, we need to supplement that and just remind people to take a look at our transparency website on cultural climate, honoring history, heritage, and diversity. There is a tremendous amount of information on there, including the chief's responses to the 8 can't wait policy issues. So we're being as transparent as our resources currently allow.
That's what I was just going to mention as well, Mayor. And also, I think we can, at this transparency portal, include the various policing policies that I think a number of our participants tonight are interested in seeing. So we'll get that done.
Great. Chief, if I can have you back up here, we had one question that was submitted this evening. Where can residents find statistics on police stops and arrests broken down by race?
They're speaking of the traffic stop data that Illinois requires. We're required to take 17 pieces of information and download it to the state on every car we stop. That is available right now on the Illinois Department of Transportation's website. You can actually go in there and look up any town. So it's sitting there right now. So anyone can go on that website and find that.
Okay, great. We did receive a question here on youth, and perhaps you or someone from your team can answer this. What steps can Mount Prospect do to help those areas that are pockets of crime? How do we more redirect youth moving from low-level crime drugs to find hope in new sustainable job training, mentoring them through that and giving them some hope, and not necessarily gravitating them towards a gang, perhaps?
Yeah, I think the stuff that Mike Eterno talked about, our outreach efforts with the youth is a big part of it. You know, we've got the soccer and all that, and that's been down in those areas and the what I'll call the multi-family areas where we seem to have a disproportionate amount of crime. And us getting into the schools, you know, I've heard some talk about there's actually cities in this country considering taking the officer out of the high school, and that nothing could be more damaging for us building a relationship. I mean, when you're at the school with a police officer, almost all of your contact with them is going to be positive. You know, it's not like an arrest situation. So I think that's where we fit into it. This COVID thing has thrown us for a loop as far as doing any community outreach. And I know that's across the board for everybody, but it's all this kind of hit at a perfect storm, really, with us not being able to go to any block parties, not being able to go to any of the things Mike mentioned, and you know, then this tragedy in Minneapolis. But you know, we were looking at maybe a summer camp again, that kind of a thing.
Mike, you wanted to chime in, and if I may ask, I think this might be a good time to maybe also discuss the collaboration that the village has with District 214 and the business community on creating some employment opportunities for youth as well.
Yeah, I think we over the last year, the initiative we have with School District 214 and the Mount Prospect Chamber of Commerce has allowed us to get in to schools within 214, including Prospect High School, Wheeling High School, Hersey High School, to provide some real world learning experiences and micro internships for residents of Mount Prospect. And we've had a couple of great participants that have come in to Public Works, to the police department, to the fire department, to the finance department, village manager's office, and assist us with projects. That's allowed us to provide a snapshot of local government. And that's something that kind of tends to be missing from the curriculums these days in junior high and high school. And so it's helpful for us to be able to present, you know, what it is we're doing, and at the same time give them an experience that they would not have really been able to do, and actually get them credit for it, and in some cases compensation as well. So I think that having that program launched is going to allow us to work with students of color and get them into these pathways within our organization and within businesses in Mount Prospect, to not only afford them the opportunity of real world experience, but, you know, frankly, it provides our businesses a workforce, which obviously that was something that there was some scarcity pre-COVID, a different situation now. But I think we're going to be able to create some micro internships specifically for people of color at our high schools to start to make, you know, meaningful progress on our, you know, matching our demographics in terms of the makeup of our teams in the Village of Mount Prospect.
Thanks, Mike. I wanted to close here today in these last few minutes by talking about next steps. We have comments coming through and questions on how do we continue having these conversations. So I'm going to invite my colleague Vicky, who's on the call, and I also wanted to invite Deputy Chief Eterno first to talk about the police side and more broadly. We received a suggestion through the comment portal about possibly integrating Zoom and these virtual platforms to continue the beat meetings. Is that something that the police department is thinking about implementing for the moving forward for the rest of the year? And if you can remind residents where they can look up which beat they're in and where they can get updates about that.
Thank you, Tricia. Actually, the discussion of Zoom meetings, it's ironic. We've actually had that internally. I will tell you, I've done public safety for 31 years, so I had no idea what a Zoom meeting was prior to COVID. Now, I know most people in the world do. I didn't know what go-to meetings were, and most of us in law enforcement didn't. So as COVID struck, we actually worked through different issues internally within the village and within the community, and we utilized the go-to meetings as well as Zoom. So that actually opened the door for us internally to start thinking that would be a great opportunity for us to incorporate that into our beat meetings. So it has been a discussion at our level to try and still continue with beat meetings, just do them virtually at this point. As far as where you'd find out about our police beats, if you go to the village website and pull down on the police department's webpage, there's a drop-down menu. There's a section titled Police Beats. When you click on Police Beats, it will give you a map of the village of Mount Prospect. It'll show you the 6 different beats, so you can kind of identify what area of town you're in and what beat you're in. If you subsequently click on that beat, it'll actually take you to an email link, and you can send an email into the sergeant and all the officers who work in that beat. It actually will give you the names of all the officers who work in that beat as well. So we've tried to identify who those officers are, and it gives you an opportunity to be able to communicate with those officers and those beat sergeants if you have a question. Sometimes we've had people say, hey, I've got people driving down my street a little fast. Not an emergency per se, but I was wondering if you could help me out with these issues. And it's a great forum and a great avenue to get to talk to the supervisors and the officers who work in that beat. So by all means, we encourage people to utilize it. Again, go to the village website, click on police department, and once you're in the police department, you'll find halfway down the screen, there's a sub bar called Police Beats. And once you click on that, it'll take you to that location.
Great, thank you so much. Vicky, I invite you to talk a little bit about just revisiting maybe pieces of our work plan and letting residents know some of the other conversations we're hoping to have on some important social justice issues and possible collaboration with the library. And then I can maybe chime in as well.
Yes, thank you, Tricia. So I love those comments that you received asking exactly about the need for continued conversation about issues of social justice and maybe other groups in Mount Prospect. So I did want to kind of elaborate, as you said, about the committee. So when we first formed the committee, we actually identified 9 areas that we were hoping to focus on. So these areas included broad things like getting to know and appreciate your neighbors, networking with businesses or organizations, and also, maybe focusing on promoting opportunities for children and youth engagement, or appreciating and assisting our seniors, or creating educational opportunities and being a community voice. So among those 9 things, then we narrowed it down to 3 kind of umbrella areas. So one of them was community building, one was engagement, and the third was awareness, education, and resources. So all of those suggestions that people wrote in of things that they would like to see. I mean, those are exactly the things that our community engagement committee would love to do and that we're trying to incorporate in our work plan. Obviously, because of COVID, some of these in-person events are now online and we're a little bit hampered, but we would still love to press forward on these with more, this is the first of our community community conversations that we hope to hold. We hope to hold many more. And if people have topics, again, we are so open to receiving your ideas and feedback of what you would like to see and how it could be beneficial to our community. So yes, thank you.
Thanks so much, Vicky. One thing that I do want to mention as we move to close tonight's meeting, our committee is working on a list of resources that we are looking forward to sharing with our attendees today and the village wide that'll include recommendations on additional reading and things that are available at the library for our residents to take advantage of. So please take a look at that. And if you haven't, please do sign up for those updates from us as well. With that, given our time here today, I do want to thank all of our panelists for joining us tonight on this very important conversation. And most importantly, I wanted to thank you, our residents of Mount Prospect, for joining in this conversation, submitting your questions, and engaging in this very important dialogue. As mentioned, if you have any questions, please do feel free to reach out to the Community Engagement Committee. Thank you so much.